To you guys that don't know, I'm Miriam. I'm the founder of Chibur. We build brands and products, and I'm live on Entre with Sara Mackin, founder of Mackin Wellness, to talk about how she's expanding access to mental health for the masses. Sara, despite the small little technical challenges that we had, how are you doing?
I'm doing really well. Thank you for asking. How about yourself?
I'm good. I'm having a great day in my newly redecorated space in Miami. It's beautiful weather, so I'm feeling pretty good.
That's awesome. Love it.
Yeah. And I really appreciate you being here. Thank you also, everyone in the audience, for tuning in. We really want you to join this conversation. It feels great to see people coming back to the stream every week. You can comment in using the comments, or you can chime in with your questions in the chat, raise your hand to join us on stage, or even use the reactions to let us know how the conversation's going. Our guest today, Sara Mackin, is a serial entrepreneur with 10 years of success in the mental health industry. She works with an incredible team over at Mackin Wellness. She's authored 3 best-selling books on Amazon. I want to kick off this really important conversation today with, what made you choose to get into this field of mental health? It's not an easy one to kind of crack into.
Oh yeah, definitely. So what really inspired me to get into the mental health industry was really through my own challenges that I had when I was younger. I struggled with a lot of depression and trauma, and my therapist really changed my life, and he really helped me to look at things in a different way. And really ever since then, I've really been on a mission to give this gift back and to give this gift back to the masses. And so that's really what initially inspired me to specifically choose the healthcare industry and the mental health care industry. I always joke too with my colleagues and on videos that I was genetically bred for this, because entrepreneurship and business is on more so on my mom's side, and a lot of people are in the healthcare sector on my dad's side. So I have always been around both of those worlds, and so I was able to merge them into one through this company.
Incredible story. I didn't know that this was something that was birthed out of your own stories of what you went through, and that's pretty amazing. And I love that you're openly sharing that, because it's something I think we do need to start doing more, is talking about our mental well-being, and not saying even, oh, you're mentally healthy or you're not mentally healthy, or just figuring out how we're flowing from day to day, because life is all about challenges, and having a therapist is just one of the tools that you can have in your toolbox. And we'll dive into what Mackin Wellness is doing to help people get access to this. But tell us a little bit about your startup journey, because there's a lot of entrepreneurs on here, and I think it would be helpful to them to know, are you self-funded? Are you bootstrapped? What has been your startup journey a little bit to this point?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I started Mackin Wellness in 2017, and I have been bootstrapping it the entire time. And essentially what I started doing in the beginning stages was just really having a big focus on increasing the revenue, obviously providing excellent client care being the number one priority, and from the financial aspect, just really maximizing the profitability as much as I possibly could. And I lived super simply for the first several years, actually, and moved back in with my parents. So I could put everything back into the business. And so I developed a relationship with my bank and certain bankers within my bank. And every year I negotiated increase our access to credit, lines of credit, credit cards. And so that is the route that I took. And before I was so I don't want to say against venture capitalists or angel investors. I really wanted to, if we're able to take credit, to be able to do so on our own, and having that as a priority. However, now I'm a little bit more open to different avenues. But I don't think you necessarily need to have a venture capitalist or an angel backing you, if you are able to get your product or the service to the market and really maximize your margins as much as you possibly can, that is definitely one way around that for sure.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. Amazing to hear that you've been bootstrapping this and totally get that you had your reservations at first. That's the same for me, but it's definitely want to keep your options open on the table now at this point. Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about Mackin Wellness and what you guys are doing over there.
Yeah, so at Mackin Wellness, we're an online therapy company on a mission to help millions of people to heal, become happy again through excellent therapy. So our differentiator is that we have a team of specialized therapists in-house that we can match you up with depending on what your insurance is, and we can get most patients scheduled in seen typically within 48 business hours. So when sometimes people find us after they've tried other therapists or they are new to therapy and they just want to get it right the first time around, that is when people reach out to us in our team.
Makes a lot of sense, and the website's fantastic. I love that. We'll drop that into the chat for those that might be interested. And I've been mispronouncing it. It's Mackin Wellness.
Yes, Mackin like bacon.
Okay.
All good.
And what about your last name? Is it Mackin?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
So glad to have cleared that up. And I apologize for mispronouncing it before. I like that so much better. Mackin Wellness. It's like you're making wellness. So cute. I love that. Have you gotten any criticism on your brand? Because one time, I posted on Reddit about mental health and what I was working on, and I just got torn to shreds. People were like, "You're not a certified counselor. Like, why makes you think you can even do this?" And I'm like, well, Reddit is wild. But what about you? Have you received any criticism of what you're working on? And if you do, how do you take that?
Yeah, so I've definitely received a lot of criticism from every angle you could possibly imagine. And basically, in the beginning stages, I typically just cry and get my sadness out then. And then I got to a point where I realized, I'm like, okay, with this criticism, putting up filters of is this relevant? Is this a valid complaint? Is this something that could genuinely be improved upon? And if so, considering making the following changes. And if it's not, just not really paying attention to it. Because sometimes, many times people share their feedback or their insight about certain things, and sometimes their opinion or their perspective is not always relevant. And so there's that. And then sometimes people are really mean on social media as well, and then you just disregard it. I remember this one time I was so excited. I was on the cover of a magazine and our company shared it across our socials, and someone made this rude comment on LinkedIn about my face. I'm like, you can't win. So it's just got to do the right things long enough and consistently. And if sometimes people are just going to share their opinions, and it's a reflection of them ultimately. If someone is unhappy, that's going to show in how they speak to you. And I feel like the internet sometimes is a wild place because there's that anonymity factor of you don't see me, you don't see my face, I can get away with saying whatever I want to say. And so that sometimes makes people share things or make comments that they typically wouldn't make to someone face to face. So that's also important to keep in mind as well.
Totally. 100%. And been thinking a lot about that lately. We're going to be having another event coming up, I believe next week, and chatting with a founder of another anonymous platform. So make sure you look into the Entre calendar for that event. Should be a pretty interesting conversation on why people like to communicate anonymously and some of the challenges that come with that style of communication.
Yeah, that was an interesting conversation for sure.
Yeah, that should be another good one for people to tune into. So you've got this brand and you're building that, but at the same time, you've been able to find the time to write and publish 3 best-selling books on Amazon. And I'm very passionate about publishing and books as well. So I'd love to just hear a little bit about that. What was the journey of publishing your own books like? How did you get to doing that? You could shed some light.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So essentially what the process was looking around for different like independent publishing houses and other places that can help you to self-publish your book. And I found an agency that is very, very specific, and the only type of books and genres that they out are bestsellers essentially. And so we had several meetings with them, and they shared I shared a couple of different topics, and then they did some keyword research to see what the most popular and highest traffic topics could be. And then that is essentially how we wrote all 3 of the books. So
smart. Love that. And we'll make sure.
It's a team effort for sure. It's not a one-person situation for sure. So
yeah, I'll share the link here where people can go ahead and grab those, because the Happy Entrepreneur one looks fantastic. And then, from depression to joy, that's fantastic. Medical cannabis and mental health. I mean, I love that. I'm also very into the cannabis. I like to dabble in the research that's been coming out with the CBD as well. My family's very involved in that. We're farmers with hemp. And so I remember you had posted a video about this topic, and I just found that really interesting that you're just so open to all of these different concepts when it comes to mental health.
Oh yeah, because the thing is not everything is for everyone. So I think it's important to have an open mind, to be open to different types of research to see. And one of the things that I've previously shared with patients and with my team is that it's not a clinically appropriate fit for every single patient. There's certain conditions where it seems to be the most effective in certain situations. So someone is considered treatment resistant. So if they've been in therapy for a long time and they've been on medications for a long time, and it appears that their symptoms haven't gone down, they have certain conditions, for instance, PTSD or generalized anxiety disorder, they could be a good fit to have in conjunction with online therapy. So it really depends what is happening with the client. It can be a really effective thing to have incorporated into treatment. And so in medical cannabis and mental health, I just talk more about the specific conditions that can benefit from having medical cannabis incorporated into the treatment, essentially.
Fantastic. Very interesting. Definitely would love to learn more. Share with me anything that you have on that. What are some of the biggest mental health issues that are facing our world today? There's so many.
Oh yeah. So anxiety is a really big problem, especially in the United States. I believe it's about 17% of the population has some type of anxiety condition. So, and COVID obviously hasn't helped with that. So anxiety is a big challenge. Depression, especially during certain times of the year, during the winter months and the fall months, can be a really big issue as well. And actually ADD and ADHD have also significantly been on the rise as well. Due to a lot of different factors, a lot of it being environmental. So there's a lot of different conditions and challenges that have been on the rise lately, and I'd say the number one is definitely generalized anxiety disorder or some type of anxiety.
If you guys are out there, you have questions for Sara, I want to encourage you to chime in, send her a DM if you don't feel comfortable. She's shared very openly. We did get a question in the chat, if you could explain the backstory on your book, From Depression to Joy.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So Depression to Joy is a guide for parents to help to support their teens with depression. So it's very specific. And the backstory behind that was, I mentioned earlier, I had a lot of challenges when I was younger, and it was really depression that brought me into therapy. And by that point in time, I was a teenager. And so it was really important to me that, I wrote this book to give back and to put together a guide for parents and also teens, because many times parents don't know what to do. Have to consider generational differences. Certain generations were not exposed to mental health as a concern. And so many times certain parents of certain generations just don't know what to do, or they're just very overwhelmed. And so that's why I put this guide together, because so much of because there are certain protective factors, which basically means protective factors are things in place that could provide additional psychological well-being or safety to someone. And one of those factors is your social support and your primary family that's around you. And so if we can get your family and your primary social supports to be supportive of your treatment and supportive of your journey in healing from depression and addressing it and working on reducing your symptoms, the likelihood of you feeling better goes up a lot. And when someone is really depressed, doing things is very difficult. If anyone's ever experienced depression, sometimes even just getting out of bed or showering or, getting yourself ready can be very, you have to hype yourself up and motivate yourself in order to do so. And so that's why I wrote this for the parents, because many times the parents may not be experiencing depression. And so if they're learning about this from a different evidence-based point of view, they have a blueprint and a guide for how they can be supportive in their daughter or sons or child's healing journey, and help to increase the likelihood of them getting better, essentially.
Absolutely. 100%. And also, being in Miami, I've had some conversations with friends that in some cultures, it doesn't even, if you're sad or depressed, it's not discussed. And so there are a lot of different factors here as well. I think that, this guide is fantastic. Definitely parents out there should check it out. And I want to introduce you to a colleague of mine at Guardian Lane. They're doing some interesting work around grief specifically, but I think some of this content would apply to what they're looking for. where would you say some of the mental health treatments that we have, are falling short?
Mm-hmm. That's a really great question. I would say certain treatments that have been around for a long time that are not evidence-based, categorically, those are absolutely, in my clinical opinion, the probability of them falling short is really high. So I'm a very database research back kind of gal. Mm-hmm. So I like things that are not effective, and I really don't like to promote things, at Mackin Wellness or anywhere that, I know actually aren't effective. So if someone is in counseling and their therapist is not trained or certified in how to use an evidence-based approach or an evidence-based method, then the probability of the treatment not helping with reducing their symptoms is quite high. Mm. So that is the biggest thing that comes to mind. And then the second thing is also called fidelity to treatment. So fidelity of the evidence-based practice. So if I'm trained in how to do cognitive behavioral therapy, but I don't actually do it in the way that it was designed, there's going to be a discrepancy. And so that's also quite important, that not only is the provider trained well in how to do it, but they're actually implementing it and executing it within the sessions with the client, and that the plan, the treatment plan, the treatment goals are also adjusted in a way where it's also all evidence-based, so it all flows together. Mm-hmm. Sometimes people say oh, I do, EMDR. However, they're not truly following the protocol of how it was designed. And so that's where supervision and ongoing training and development is super important. And not necessarily every therapist has access to that, or not every company is doing that on a regular basis. So training is very important to ensure that the therapists are truly doing a service that is going to help people, because you don't want to waste people's time with something that isn't actually working. Mm-hmm. And I think that sometimes people get discouraged from therapy because they see one or two bad therapists, and then they generalize oh, they're all the same. I'm just going to talk about the same 4 things over and over again, rather than having an actual treatment plan of what to do and what the biggest challenges are, and coming together with objectives for what specifically needs to be handled and addressed in order to move forward.
Yeah. And so at Mackin Wellness, you guys, all of your therapists are trained in this and are getting the education ongoing, I would assume.
They literally have unlimited clinical trainings that they can attend at any point in time, because it's all virtual. So they have a tremendous amount of support and multiple supervision groups a week, and then access to their colleagues and their supervisor and clinical team lead. So they have a lot of support to be able to effectively provide and render this type of online counseling.
Mm-hmm. And can you give our audience just a few quick takeaways? If somebody's out there watching this recording back, maybe it'll help them live a better life now.
Yeah, absolutely. So if someone is listening, if you're listening and you're struggling, the number one piece of advice I would get is to get help. It is such a game changer. If you've been stuck and struggling, there's only so much that we can individually do on our own. And so I highly, highly, highly recommend you reaching out to a supportive therapist. If you are in Pennsylvania, Maryland, maybe Florida, and you're looking for a therapist, definitely reach out to our team. You can call us at 833-274-HEAL, or you can go to our website at makinwellness.com, and we can match you with a specialized therapist who accepts your insurance. And if you're outside of those areas, definitely reach out to your insurance company, and you can get some referrals easily that way. We are able to support out of state clients through consulting, which is slightly different than therapy. I mean, it's not covered by insurance. I also did want to share that as an option. If anyone specifically really wanted to see us and our team, definitely reach out and get help, because whenever you do reach out, you start to get a plan together and meet with someone who's really specialized and caring and can meet with you at the convenience of your schedule. It really makes a big difference. What big part of improving access to mental health care and support is through the way of how we're doing it, through the virtual modalities. So we're able to meet with patients through secure video visits and through phone calls as well. So it cuts down on your commute. You save a ton of time. It's typically a lot less than traditional in-person therapy, and the outcomes show that as long as the person is comfortable with meeting with the therapist remotely, that the outcome is just as good, if not better, as seeing someone in person. So,
yes. Great tips, and great to know that people can access Mackin Wellness outside of Pennsylvania and those other key states as you're growing and expanding the company. Transitioning into a little bit of a different subject here. We are on a Web3-ish platform. You know, Entre is integrated with wallets and crypto and all of that stuff. What do you think about Web3? Is that going to affect mental health in any way, or any thoughts about Web3 blockchain or anything like that?
Yeah, so Miriam, that's a really great question, and it's super fascinating to me. I'm still learning so much about it, and I am certain it's going to impact the mental health care world. I don't have a lot of comments, only because I don't like to comment or speak on things that I don't know about truly. So I don't want to share my faulty opinion, because I know it's the future, and it's something we definitely need to make some changes to make sure that we're on Web3 and all that stuff. So I wish I had more than that, but that's essentially all I got.
No, that's good. We're all getting into it as much as we can with what we can do. We have more questions coming in. What do you see as the most common battle people struggle with when it comes to mental health?
Yeah, so the most common battle that I see people struggling with can be one of two things: challenges with the past, or a lot of anticipation of the future. So if someone's experienced a lot of challenging events, or we call them adverse life experiences, that can lead to someone experiencing significant mental health challenges, or anticipation of the future. So worrying about the future, uncertainty, not knowing how things are going to happen, and people will then sometimes start to worry, and then the worry becomes chronic, and that can develop into anxiety. So some of these things can be brought on from environmental factors, like everything that has happened in the past few years. Sometimes it's genetic, where your dad had compulsive disorder, and now you find yourself feeling anxious when certain things are out of order. And other times it can be because of where you're living, and so there's a lot of different factors that could impact someone's likelihood of developing a mental health disorder. There's a lot of different factors.
Thank you for sharing. And thank you so much for your questions. If you guys have questions, please chime them in to the chat or raise your hand. We're happy to bring you up on stage as well. How can people go about, supporting and following your work? I know we've formed a partnership with Mackin Wellness. I'm shocked your tweets don't just go viral, and I'm very excited. We're going to be sharing all of Sarah's tweets. Well, not all of them. She tweets a lot, and they're really good. But some of the tweets, we're going to be blasting them out on social media. We're going to be sharing them with our members of Quokka. They're very motivational. They provide you a little lift and some tidbits of advice as you're going throughout the day. Make sure you're following Sara on Twitter. And what are some other ways that we can support you while you're on your journey?
Thanks so much, Miriam. That's so nice of you. Definitely following myself, Sara Mackin, or Mackin Wellness, and liking and sharing our posts is a huge help. And letting your loved ones and your friends and family know about Mackin Wellness, so we can be a part of their healing journey as well, and just essentially sharing the word.
Mm-hmm. Always sharing. We have another question. This one's a complex one. Okay. Thanks, Christina, for your question. What are your thoughts on the MDMA clinical trials on PTSD and the FDA approval?
Yeah, so that's a really great question, and I believe what the trial was microdosing MDMA and how that could help to reduce some symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. So I personally have not read the findings of those trials. I have heard about using MDMA for PTSD treatment, and I essentially have to learn a bit more about that before I do share about that. But it's definitely fascinating stuff, and I'll make sure to look into that prior to us connecting again, so I can share more thorough comment about it. And ultimately, like what I've mentioned before, whatever I support, whatever is effective. I'm not married to any type of treatment. If something comes out tomorrow that, certain medication, management type, or, if psychedelics are more effective than what we're suggesting now, then we'll absolutely adjust what we're suggesting from a clinical basis, because I'm super focused on whatever works for the patient, not necessarily whatever historically we have done.
Yeah, I think that that's a really important point, is people are always changing. We're evolving. And think about how much we're going to change as a global community after the last few years we've been through. So trying new things and not being stuck on like, this only works, I think is important. You want to have tools in your toolbox to be able to pull out when you have certain challenges that come your way. And getting educated is probably one of the very first things that you can do. And I know Mackin Wellness has a lot of resources on their website that you can check out and learn more. Personally, I'm more of like an all-natural type of medicine, type of person. I like serotonin is like one of the symbols that I go to a lot. So I think MDMA is made in a lab. So that probably for me, I'm not speaking for Sara, but for me, things that are made in the lab, I don't know. I'm not saying they're not effective. I'm just saying, I don't know about that. I don't know. That's, for me, I don't know how much I enjoy that. But, and then it's like, businesses on it, and then they're like, I don't know, I guess we do sell coffee, and that is a drug too. So
yeah.
It is complex.
It definitely is. And it definitely is. And with anything that we ingest, like into our bodies, like our kidneys and our livers do have to filter them out. And so for the cost benefit analysis of, is this, and again, we actually don't do any medication management. We only specialize in online therapy. So we have prescribers and partners that we refer to for certain cases where we think it's beneficial for them to have something in addition to online therapy. But there's definitely, cost benefit analysis. If someone's really struggling, or truly like a chemical imbalance, and they, tried a bunch of different things, they've made lifestyle changes, they're going outside, they're eating healthy, they're taking supplements, and, sometimes it's not enough for certain patients. And so having additional options can definitely be good.
Yeah.
I'm curious to learn more about that as well, Christina. I have some time this evening. I'm probably going to be Googling that to try to find the research study.
Yeah, Christina is on Entre. We've met her and chatted with her. I've chatted with her a few times. Great to see you, Christina. She says she's waiting on the results of the final stage 3 clinical trials too, but it's proving to be more effective than current meds, which is interesting. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you, Sara, for joining today, for all the work that you're doing to help improve access and get people mental health support that they need remotely, virtually, through their devices from the privacy of their own homes. It's really innovative, and I love to see that the company's growing. Make sure everyone out there give Sara a follow and support what her and her team are building at Mackin Wellness.
So thanks so much for the warm introduction and interview. This is so much fun, and I'm already looking forward to the next conversation that we have. So thanks so much for having me on. And if there's anything that I can support you with, Miriam, or anyone in our community here, definitely feel free to reach out to me. And I'm excited to be a resource for all of you. And thanks so much for having me. I love this community and Entre, and it's so much, it's just a joy and a privilege to be a part of. So thank you.
Thank you. We'll talk to you soon. Have a good rest of your week.
Thanks, you too.
Thanks everybody for tuning in. I'm going to close up shop here. I'm going to stop the recording.